Hi YouTube, ACDodd here again, and welcome to another episode of On the Road Tuning with me, ACDodd. And this time I've got 3 cars for you at one venue. Let's get stuck in. Okay, so here we are down in Bristol. First car of the day, this one, and it's a lovely little road racer. 998 Mini. So under the bonnet we have the usual powerhouse of a 998 A Plus engine, although this one is not running particularly well, so it won't idle at the moment. So let's go and find out a bit more about that, and perhaps any other issues, and a bit more about the car from the owner. Okay, so this is Chris. All right, Chris. So nice car, this one. Why have you called us out today?
So it's been a bit of a sort of 2.5 year rebuild. And the engine's had some unleaded head conversion, a few nice bits on there, but now it won't idle correctly off of choke. On choke it sort of fouls the plugs and sort of creates a bit of a misfire. So I've called you down today, and hopefully we can get it running nice and smooth.
Right, okay, well in which case, yeah, we've already worked out that it doesn't like running, because I couldn't keep it running when it was idling. So let's get stuck in and see what we can find.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, one of the first things I've noticed is if we have a look at the points there, you will see, although they're new, that foot that rubs on the cam has got a telltale melting happening on the top. Now that's usually indicative of they've been getting hot. And why have they been getting hot when this hasn't been on the road? Well, I'll tell you why it's been getting hot. It's been getting hot because the coil that's fitted is actually a ballast coil. So it's a 1.4 ohm unit, which would be fine if there was a ballast wire fitted. But because this engine has been, or this car's been rewired, it's been fitted with a loom that has no ballast. So we're running a 1.4 ohm coil with full battery voltage through points ignition. And of course the points are not putting up with that because they're running hot and they're starting to melt. So just the same as I did with the orange Mini in episode 1, the owners agreed that we're going to upgrade this whole system because I've got to change the coil anyway, and we're going to put a high power recurved ACDodd recurve distributor on there. So that's a power spark unit which I've recurved. We're going to put a 0.8 ohm coil. We're also going to change the spark plugs and the leads. I've already checked the lead resistance and they're around 7k, so we're going to put a new set of power spark leads on, re-gap the plugs, and then we'll carry on with the tune. So I'm going to get that done now. So just to interject a little bit into this video, I just thought I'd add a little bit about those points there. So obviously starting to melt, which is interesting. I haven't seen that for quite a few years. But again, this is one of those issues where people fit the wrong parts to their cars. So we've got no ballast resistor, and yet we've got a 1.5 ohm coil. So we've got too much current flowing in the circuit with nothing to limit it. And the points run hot, which is what you can see here. So yeah. It's actually used to be common years ago, but I haven't seen that for a little while. But what happened here is the customer wanted to change to electronic and was basically looking for the opportunity. So we were able to upgrade this one. So let's get stuck back on with the video. Right, so engines now back together. So we've got the new ACDodd Power Spark recurve distributor. We've got a 0.8 ohm high power coil, again power spark, VCE is the part number. We've got a new set of power spark leads. We've gone down from 7k down to 1.3 ohms, 1.3k per lead. The customer supplied me a set of BP5 ES spark plugs, which we've gapped at 35 thou, so they're all in. Engine's now running. It's all timed up. Obviously vacuum's connected, everything's working as it should. Engine now runs and starts. The carburetor didn't have any oil in it, so I've just put some 20 weight oil in it for now. And I've also changed the needle because it had an AAC needle, so we've gone for an AAF. Now I'm going to put the sniffer up the back and we'll start the process of dialing that in. So we're on to sorting out the carburetor. You see the top's off. So what we're basically doing is determining whether the carburetor's worn. It has got some wear in this carburetor, but the owner tells me he only wants it for a year before he puts a bigger engine in. So there is absolutely no point selling this guy a new carburetor because he's going to change it in a year's time. Although it's worn and the idle's not quite steady, and we do have a little bit of issue returning the fuel in after revving, but for a year, purpose of a year, the guys I've explained to the guy that sometimes it might stall when you pull up to the lights and things like that. But what we have got is I put in an AAF needle. That turned out to be a touch on the rich side, so I've gone down to an AAE. And we're about right everywhere except 3000 revs. So I'm just going to give that a little tweak, and then we'll get that back in and be ready for a test drive. So another issue I quite often come across is the carburetor's worn, and in this case I would have wanted to change it, but the customer informed me that he's going to replace the engine, you know, in a year's time or something like that. So there was little point in spending laying out money on a brand new or a rebuilt carburetor for that engine when his new one would need to be a bigger carb, and I completely agree. So what I did in this case is work with what we had and then made the customer aware that there may be issues with the running of the car due to the worn carburetor, like stalling or the mixture changing, or the idle being inconsistent and things like that. So it is worth bearing in mind that although you know, in an ideal world every car would have a new carburetor, well, that's not always possible. So this is an example of that. Right, so this one's we finished dialing it in. So that engine is all ready for a test drive. We had a few problems. Carburetor is worn, as the owner originally told me, but because he's going to replace the engine in probably a year's time or somewhere around that order, I've told him, so I've set average fuel in, so it wanders a little bit, but the point is there's no point spending 400 quid and then having to spend 400 quid or more on a bigger carburetor in maybe 12 months or 18 months time. So we're going to run with this one. It's running a lot better. The fueling's been improved. It was too lean at 3000. I took about a tenth off the needle at that point, and she's all good to go. So let's do a test drive. Okay, so Chris has now been out in his car. So what's it like, Chris?
Oh, totally different. Idles now, warms up correctly, a lot smoother. Obviously got the electronic ignition on now, so no more points to mess around with. Just a quick test drive on the vehicle, and it's just smooth. It feels exactly like it should do for a 998, so really pleased. Excellent. All right, so no flat spots, more power. No flat spots, exactly how I expect it to be. Excellent. All right, well, thanks for getting us down to look at your car, and so far, would you recommend this service to anyone else? 100%, yeah. Wonderful. All right, well, let's crack on with the next car and see what we can do to that. Brilliant, thank you very much. So I just want to add in here that I just wanted to thank Chris for putting on that tuning day. Without people like Chris, then things would be more expensive for people. So on that day, we had Chris's car plus 2 others, and that enabled them to share the cost of having me there for the day. So it made it significantly cheaper than having me come to their own property, for example. So yeah, and one of those people we'll see later come all the way from Scotland. So that made a significant saving for those people involved. So again, thanks to Chris for doing that. Okay, so car number 2, we've got a work in progress. So not totally on the road, this one, and it's a project that's in play. But under the bonnet we have a 1275 A+. Yep, we can see the fans on the wrong way, so we know that. And in this case, the owner doesn't want to come on film, which is fine. So we're just going to dig straight in and see what we got. And in this case, ACDodd. It's got 65D ignition. So let's get stuck in and see what we can find.
Okay, getting into this one. First thing I found is coil 1.5 ohm. With a 65D system, you need a 0.8. So I've immediately changed that to a 0.8 ohm Viper Power Spark dry coil. So that's on there now. The next thing we looked at, you see the plugs are out and they're all black. Okay, so plugs wise, we can see very, very black, except number 4, which looks a little bit leaner than the rest, but still got a black tip, earth strap. So clearly we've got a too much fuel problem. Now what I've been trying to do is run the engine to try and get timing settings, but I can't get the engine to start properly because of the state of these plugs. So we're going to put a new set of plugs in it, and I'm going to turn the fueling down, so hopefully we can get the engine to run and stay running while I'm tuning. Okay, so yeah, we got this all back and running again. New high power coil, new set of BP6 ES plugs. The reason why that was sooty is not because of the setting, it's because it was running rich and the owner has reset the carb according to my video. But unfortunately the plugs were already black and they needed cleaning. So anyway, the point is we've changed that, got that all properly. I had a problem with the module which made the engine stop. So I've actually changed the module, but it turned out to be temperature related, and I think we've got a wiring fault where this black and white wire may be connected to the temperature circuit. So don't ask me why that is, but I've removed it now and we all seem to be good. So we're going to now change our attention to the ACDodd and get this dialed in. Okay, so one of the reasons why I always say to people, you know, don't call me round unless the car's drivable on the road, etc., is because of that little example there is just one example whereby the car stopped on me because basically the bugs hadn't been ironed out because the car hadn't been driven on the road. So in this case, I was able to fairly quickly locate the issue, but I did have to replace the ignition module because I thought it was a heat related issue, but it turned out that it was a wire. The owner did want to keep the module because it was a new Lucas unit that I had, so he was happy to pay for that. But the point is, if I'm spending time chasing faults, I'm not spending time tuning the car. So the point is, if you want to get the best out of these visits, then if you can make sure that the car is ready for tuning by having it on the road, and then any faults can be ironed out before I get there, so all I have to worry about is spending time tuning your car. The other thing to remember is if the car can't be test driven afterwards, then I can't solve any faults that might be available or might be present while I'm there, and I'm not going to come back afterwards once I've left. So it is important to make sure that the car is ready for tuning. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so why am I showing a picture of 2 needles? Well, this is interesting because the needle on the right was the one that was in it. The needle on the left is the one that's going to go in it. And one of these is too rich. And the one on the right was the needle that was in it, which is a BDL. And the one on the left is the needle that's going in it, which is also a BDL. And you might think that's a bit strange, but the point is, what I'm trying to illustrate here is, just because the needles are the same, that doesn't mean that they're actually the same. So clearly this is an older one, but it's got a little bit of wear on it, but it's actually quite a bit too rich. Whereas this one has got less wear on it, and it's made to a tolerance, and it's actually come up leaner. So that's my point, is just because you know, you want to make something leaner, if it's only a fine adjustment you need, you might find that just using this new version of the same needle, or maybe 3 or 4 versions of the same needle, will actually give you the fueling correction that you actually need. And that's because the tolerances that these needles are made to are wider than you need for some of the fueling adjustments. So we got there with this one, got it dialed in. What we've actually got is we had to go down to 10-weight oil. I also had to modify the damper to make it rise a bit quicker because we was getting a little bit too much fuel when we throttled it. But in terms of where we are, this one's all ready for a test drive. Okay, third car of the day, something completely different. Well, I wouldn't say completely different, just older. But same A-series engine. Look at this lovely little car. Fantastic. Farina. You gotta love it. Wonderful. So let's have a look under the bonnet. So under the bonnet, we've got a lightly modified 1275 based engine. So I think it's been bored out, so I'm not sure the capacity. Yep, this one's been bored out 1293, so plus 20 oversize. As you can see, it's got HI44 carburetor. So let's have a dig in and see what we can find. Okay, so I've got the engine running. First thing I noticed was the HT leads the resistance was a little bit higher, so 6 to 7k. So I've replaced the leads. It's fitted with a 3 ohm or 2.5 ohm Lucas coil. It's got electronic ignition. The spark plugs were a bit dark, as can be seen here. So yeah, that's normally indicative. They're slightly different as well, so it indicates potentially a little bit of a coil power issue, which I'll allude more into in a minute. So in terms of coil power, if we have a look at the dwell angle, that's a variable dwell dizzy. Unfortunately, that's a 2.5 ohm coil, so that needs basically the full amount of dwell angle when the engine's idling. So the customer says that the engine's not starting quickly. So what we're going to do is do a few more tests and determine whether we need to stay with that dizzy or we need to change the coil and dizzy. So this one's come up before with the variable dwell type dizzies and how you test them. I use a normal dwell meter, as can be seen in that video, and then obviously when you rev it you can see it goes from a low number to a higher number and then back again, and that basically is the indication of a variable dwell dizzy. And obviously in this particular case the engine was fitted with a 2.5 ohm coil, which is not meant to be run on a variable dwell type arrangement. In fact, you need effectively a ballast type coil. So in this case we did change it for a 1.4 ohm, and what that basically does is maintain the power at low speed and then obviously increase the power at high speed, which is actually what you want for a high compression or more of a performance orientated engine. It's very common. People still don't understand the whole thing about variable dwell, ballast resistance, coil primary resistance, etc, etc. So there are videos on it which I've done, so please go back and look at those, but for now let's move on. Okay, so moving on, what we've now done is I've determined that we got obviously variable dwell. So what we've done, I've took the distributor cap off, checked, it's a power spark module, so that means I can run a 1.5 ohm coil. So what I've done is I fitted a power spark 1.4 ohm unit, in fact, which is their ballast ignition coil, and that will improve the power for starting, so that'll solve the problem of cranking. And then I've turned my attention to the carburetor. In terms of what I see here, the carburetor fueling is pretty much spot on. Maybe it was a touch rich on the mixture screw setting, so I backed that off, but the needle itself is tracking very well, so I don't need to do any modifications. The only thing I've found is it's maybe a touch rich on acceleration, so the oil in the dash pot I think was a bit thick, so I've changed that now for some 20 weight oil, and we shall start the engine and see where we are. Okay, so we got this one dialed in. Just to recap, new set of plugs, gapped at 25 thou, changed the coil for a 1.4 ohm ballast unit. We haven't gone for a high power because it hasn't got a high power module in the dizzy. Dizzy timing was perfect. The only thing I did think about the dizzy timing was maybe it was a bit short of vacuum advance. I only had 39 degrees, which whilst okay isn't maybe the best for this engine for economy. Moving over to the carburetor, as it came in it was too rich, so I've leaned that out a little bit, and it was also too rich when you throttled it, so the oil was a bit thick. So if we just throttle it now, as you can see, that sounds a bit like an angry Farina. So we'll let the owner go at it, and I'm sure he'll be very pleased. Okay, so the owner obviously didn't want to be on the video, but in terms of how he liked the test drive, he was very, very happy. And that was an owner that come from Scotland, so I know he's going to stay around for about a week afterwards at this end of the country, and then he's going to make his way back. I also asked him if he could track the fuel economy, because one of the things he said was that perhaps it was a bit heavy on fuel. So I've asked him to track the fuel economy on the way back, so at least we'll get an idea what that is and whether it's improved. Anyway, that's it for this video. So I really hope you enjoyed this particular episode with 3 vehicles on, and obviously a nice Farina as well. So without further ado, please like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you soon. Thank you very much.